Live and Social Network studios, the South Side studios, which are literally on the south side of Minneapolis, here with Michael Russo, Evan Davis, Sean Bernard, looking over our shoulders. First time he's ever done this. Just like I think he doesn't want you to cuss today, Mike. I think that's what it is.
Please do. It's a podcast.
That's true. It's a podcast. Cuss all you want.
I do have a gutter mouth.
I'm Jim Souhan. This is SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. This is another one of my episodes with co-host Michael Russo, Star Tribune hockey writer. So the first historic occasion is broadcasting from these studios. The second historic occasion is Michael Russo turning down coffee. What the hell's wrong with you today?
Yeah, I don't know. I have some sort of flu. I woke up this morning and I don't know, just lethargic and run down and just like body aches. It's terrible. It's amazing you got me out here. I haven't had a thing to eat today, and I just feel like crap. So the thought of coffee right now, man, it just doesn't. What's bad is I have this big piece for Sunday that I'm supposed to write today, because I'm on a plane all day tomorrow, and every time I tried to even transcribe today, the computer screen was just spinning, so I just basically haven't done a thing today. So
this will either be the worst piece you've ever written, or the best.
Well, yeah,
I mean, it could be. A lot of writers do their
worst.
best work on either whiskey or hallucinogenics. This could be great stuff.
Yeah, no, this is bizarre today, and usually like when I get sick, I get like strep throat or something like this. I'm not used to actually having like actual symptoms of something. So
I got sick like before the holidays, and I went to the doctor finally today, and he said you probably have a sinus infection. He said everybody he knows is sick.
Yeah,
everybody has been sick for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah,
it's just living in Minnesota in the winter. That's all it is.
Yeah, I did get my flu shot, but apparently I was watching the Bill Maher show the other day, and they had a doctor on it. I guess the flu shot this year was 23% effective.
How about that? I saw that too.
Yeah, so
beautiful.
But this is an awesome house that we're doing this from. It's a Live and Social Network house, basically.
Yeah,
they're going to do everything in, and I was telling Sean when I got here that this reminds me a couple of summers ago. I went over to England because I was telling you my buddy is married to this Broadway actress, and she's awesome. Her name is Casey Levy, very famous. Yep. She's from Hamilton, Ontario.
She gonna say yep?
Yeah. So Lim is, and like she's in that now. She's been in like Hair and Ghost and Wicked and everything. But anyway, so she was doing Hair in London. And so I went over there to visit my buddy David, and we went to like Chelsea's opener against West Brom, which was awesome because they won the championship the year before. So it was pretty cool. We saw Drogba get a hat trick, and then we took a train up to Liverpool with Casey and two of her co-stars in the show, and we did the whole like behind the scenes Beatles tour where we basically we hired a woman that basically drove us around town and gave us our own personal Beatles tour. And one of the things is daily and you have to book this like months in advance. You can get a personal tour. They give like 10 people a day a tour of John Lennon and Paul McCartney's childhood home. And so we went into John Lennon's childhood home, and that's what this house reminds me at. And it's just funny that we got the Beatles picture right above the studio here. And what was neat about that trip, and I think I might have told you this story on the first podcast that we did before we kind of did our own thing here.
Everybody who's listening was drunk. So
yeah, I know. But it was awesome. We did this tour, and it's like 10 of us in here, but like it's 5 of us that are together.
I don't think you did tell me this.
Okay.
Go ahead.
It was 5 of us that were together, and then there were just 5 random people that also happened to be on the tour with us, and we're walking around, and I'm like in one of the bedrooms just kind of checking it out, and all of a sudden I hear singing. And my friend, his now wife, and 2 of the co-stars are in this little kind of like patio, singing a cappella one of the Beatles songs, and everybody in the house just stopped still because it was so amazing, like the reverberations in this house. And the person that gave us this tour was telling us that that's where Paul McCartney and John Lennon would actually go and sit there with the guitar and write songs because of just how the acoustics were in this little kind of patio area. It was pretty neat. But that's what this house is. It's got that charm to it, you know.
That's one thing I love about both sports and music is it doesn't matter where you came from, how rich you were. If you're good, you find your way. And it might be a kid shooting it on 12 hours a day on the blacktop and becoming an NBA star. It might be a guy who just grabs a guitar and just plays and plays and plays.
Yeah.
Last night I had GB Layton on the show.
Yeah.
He was great. He was great talking about everything. And Sean, what are we going to call the living room? The living room sessions?
Living room sessions.
Living Room Sessions. That's Sean Bernard, the owner of the Live Social Network, and we're in the house. We're upstairs. Downstairs in the living room will be the Living Room Sessions. We're going to bring in all kinds of artists to play and to talk to us and hang out and maybe do recreational drugs just for the fun. But I mean, GB Layton, talking to him last night, he just, and it's like the same thing I read about Springsteen, same thing I read about Keith Richards, same thing I read about the Stones. You know, they were all poor, and they all just got a guitar and just played it until the damn thing almost fell apart and taught themselves the craft.
Yeah. It still takes luck, though, you know, because I'm blown away. You know, everybody knows, I think, by now that I'm a huge music guy, and I go and I watch people in this town that are as talented as anybody out there that's famous, and you know, they just didn't have that one break yet that got them, you know, that huge break. I mean, you know, there are so many people in this town that are talented. That you know,
and that's another point I made with GB last night. Brian is the name he actually goes by. Is that sports are a pure hierarchy. If you can do it, somebody's going to pay you to do it. It's that simple. And the better you do it, the more money you're going to make, the more you're going to win. All those things. Music is kind of it's really not a strict meritocracy. There are people who are brilliant, who are great, who don't necessarily make it big, and there are people who are crappy who will make it big.
And that's what I love. You know, one of the things that I do on the road whenever we're out, you know, on the road is go to, you know, I usually look it up and find places where you could go and listen to live bands and live music, especially in Nashville. That's the most incredible place to do that. And I'm blown away at just the talent out there and just how you still need to, you know, it's kind of like anything. I mean, you know, and it takes a stroke of luck and making the right choices to get to exactly the pinnacle that you want to get to.
Yeah.
So.
Now, I think there's like the 0.01% who are just so brilliant they're going to make it no matter what. And it's not that they were discovered, it's that they were inevitably going to be discovered at some point.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of people out there who write great songs, have great voices, put together gregreat bands. And if they don't have that one hit that propels them, then nobody's going to invest in it.
No question. I'm friends with this one girl, Davina Sowers. Have you heard of Davina and the Vagabonds? Yeah. She's basically, I mean, she sounds like Norah Jones. She's just incredible. And she plays. She does tour a lot now. Goes to Europe and all around the United States. But she's plays here all the time. You got to go see them live.
I'd like to.
I mean, they are incredible, and she is the type of person that to me like should be just everywhere. Like anytime you turn on the radio, you should be hearing Davina. And you know, there's another example of just somebody that, you know, that the incredible talent that's in this area. So
I also read a great quote from Peter Frampton the other day. He said that a pop star's career lasts about 18 months. A musician's career lasts an entire lifetime.
Yeah,
and that's so true. You even a lot of people are great. Even if they make it big, it might their star might only burn for a little while, and then they got to go just kind of hit the road, make the money the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. No question. It's grind. And I've gotten, you know, like I think I've told you, I've, you know, become friendly with Matt Hires, who comes up to Minnesota a ton, and Eric Hutchinson's, and you know, the amount of work that it takes these guys. I mean, you know, Matt Hires drives his own van around the country, and just the amount of effort that it takes, you know, especially when you're independent and you know. I think he feels a little freedom now because he lost his label and now he's kind of, you know, an indie guy. But you know, sometimes when you're that and the grind that it takes, you know, it's pretty incredible what these guys have to do.
What is the hockey equivalent, Michael, to Deflategate?
To Deflategate? I don't know. A lot of people were joking the other day that maybe the Red Wings deflated some pucks on the Wild in that shootout. But you know, hockey's equivalent. You know. I don't know. I mean, it's not Deflategate, but maybe anything that the Philadelphia Flyers get away with. I mean, it seems like that team gets away with murder every single year because of the friendliness between Ed Snyder, who owns Comcast, and the NHL. And you look, and Sean Bernard's crawling on the floor right now.
Well, we have that effect on
video streaming right now, too, just for the heck of it.
Okay.
I would have worn a nicer hat had I known that.
That's a good point. You really should.
Like the Flyers, I mean, you know, they just seem to get away with, you know, this is a team that you know, like, well, example is, you know, they sit there, Slava Voinov, who plays for the LA Kings, is suspended for allegedly beating up his wife. The Kings put him on the ice one day, and during his suspension, and publicly is fined, I think it was $100,000 or whatever it was. It's public. The Flyers, during Christmas time, get their team together and secretly fly to Nashville the day before the game when they're not allowed. And it finally comes out that they did this, and then of course a little tourist press release from the league that they've been fined an undisclosed amount of money. The fact that they have a guy on their payroll right now that works for the league, and yet the Philadelphia Flyers get away with the fact that they could use the fact that Chris Pronger I'm talking about Chris Pronger, that he's out right now. And so they get the cap benefit of putting him on LTIR when he's essentially just keeping space on that roster. Yet he is actually working for the NHL. I mean, just the double standards there, where some teams are up against it in cap, and a team like the Boston Bruins have to go out and trade a guy like Johnny Boychuk. The Chicago Blackhawks have to do that with Nick Leddy because they're so close to the cap, but yet the Philadelphia Flyers get away with having Pronger still on their roster, still getting the cap benefit of putting him on an LTIR, yet he's working for the league for X amount of money. It's just stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't know if it's Deflategate, but they certainly seem to get away with a lot of things.
Well, what fascinates me about this story, it's fascinating in and of itself, Bill Belichick trying to find a way to cheat in a championship game. But I really like taking a broader look and looking at the different cultures, because baseball has always been a cheating culture. You cover the game on a daily basis. You know that somebody's corking their bat, somebody's shaving down the handle, somebody's taking greenies. So the idea in baseball was always, the phrase in the clubhouse was, don't go out there naked. In other words, give yourself every advantage to win that game. And I don't think anybody really became offended by cheating in baseball until PEDs came along. And the reason that people got so offended by it was because it started obliterating the history, the record books, which baseball fans, treat like the Bible. Football is kind of a cheating culture too, but there are just certain boundaries you can't cross over, and Belichick seems to be one of the few guys who's willing to challenge those boundaries.
Yeah. I will say I watched Belichick's press conference today, and I think Tom Brady's is starting right now, so unfortunately we're not going to see everything that's going on. But I believe that Belichick had nothing to do with this. Maybe I'm out of my mind, but he was so adamant today that would take balls of steel to sit there and completely deny any sort of wrongdoing here from his personal standpoint. I mean, to me, I watched that press conference, and he was point blank throwing everything on Tom Brady. And Tom's the one that's on record in 2 or 3 interviews that they've played in the last couple of days saying that he likes throwing with underinflated footballs. I really think that this is not Belichick. I mean, maybe I know they love to call him Belicheat,
yes.
But I don't know. I am going to be fascinated to watch this Tom Brady press conference, because they asked him about it on Monday, and he just absolutely laughed it off in what I felt was the worst acting in history. Just listening to him on this radio interview laughing hysterically, like, that's the first time I've heard that. I'm going to be interested to see what this thing looks like right now. I think this was a Brady thing and not a Belichick thing.
Well, that's certainly a possibility. It will still implicate Belichick because it happened under his watch and because he's cheated before, and people. And even if you and I decide to believe that he had nothing to do with it, the league really can't take that stance. It's like Goodell has said before. Of course, he picks his spots, but Goodell has said before, ignorance is not an excuse. Brady says he didn't alter the footballs in any way. One guy I know who's there covering it just sent out a tweet saying Brady sounds extremely nervous.
Yeah.
So Brady did admit he picks which balls he wants before the games. He said the equipment guys do a great job preparing the balls. My theory coming in today, knowing there were going to be these press conferences, was that Brady and Belichick would find some way to blame an underling. They would sacrifice some poor equipment schmuck.
Oh, yeah.
Just like that's what happened with the USC thing. They ended up firing an equipment manager. I don't know what the mechanics of this were, whether it was an equipment guy who knows what Brady likes taking it upon himself to do it, whether it was Brady ordering it, whether it was Belichick in his evil genius mode overseeing the whole thing. But you got to hold the people who have the power and who get the reward responsible.
My big question is, what comes out of this? I mean, to me, all right, they beat the crap out of the Colts, but I'm sorry. At some point, the NFL should say, you know what, you forfeit. It's over. like they absolutely cheated here, and to take a draft pick away or something like that, to sit there and mess with the integrity of the game is such a black eye on the sport of football. It's ridiculous. And the other thing, maybe it's because I have no allegiances to any team. Like, I literally am not a fan of anybody. Okay, but if I was a dad with kids that was a Patriots fan, I would be absolutely just beyond sickened over this. Because to me, that is the big issue here, is that they are going out there and are absolutely willing to cheat. And to me, that there should be parents out there that says this is absolutely unacceptable. I mean, and that's what I hope here, is that the NFL actually sticks them with some major penalty. I know that they're still going to be in the Super Bowl, but they should not be. I mean, there needs to be an absolute message sent to all football teams that this is baloney. And one thing they've got to figure out
is... You can't use words like baloney on the podcast. Let's calm it down here. Calm it down, babe.
But I do think that they need to come up with... And then the other thing is they've got to come up with a way. I don't understand why, like just reading these tweets right now, why players are allowed to pick the footballs that they're going to use during a game. That's stupid. I mean, the fact that Brady is saying that every game he sits there and picks the footballs, I mean, that's absurd. There should be a uniform football that everybody is using, not people on the Colts sideline and not people on the Patriots. But that to me is the big thing here. And a couple of the questions today, the Belichick that he did not answer aren't you embarrassed? That you have fans out there that you continually show that you're willing to cross the line. I mean, maybe I'm naive, but if I was a fan of the Patriots, I would be absolutely disgusted today. And that's a big issue that's another subplot here. That
I also think to go off on that tangent, I also think that the football fans I know, and the football fans I observe, and the football fans I'm exposed to via social media or my interactions when I go to games, I feel like baseball, there is a real sense, yeah, we really want you to win, but we also want you to be kind of examples. I think hockey players have a certain ethical culture. I think basketball players have a certain ethical culture. I feel like football has become this area of American life where everybody just wants their own self-interest to be fulfilled. Everybody just wants their team to win, and they don't give a damn how. Because you already know 80% of the football players are taking steroids or some kind of they're all cheating. And the reason people don't get offended is because there's so much cheating on every side. There's not an advantage gained. They're all monsters. They're all taking steroids. It's always been, to me, the NFL is above reproach in some ways because its fans don't want to hold people accountable in that league.
Because there's such a hysteria when you put on that jersey and you're just, you care about, if you're the Vikings. I mean, wasn't it you? Didn't you write a column about this when AP got in? Yeah, about just how, how you're learning a lot about people's morals here if you were willing to just sit there and say, AP should be on the football field playing regardless of what he, did to his child. I don't know. I think that we should all look at ourselves and just say that we should hold these teams to a higher standard. I want to watch clean baseball game, a clean hockey game, a clean football game, and clean basketball game. Maybe, again, I'm absolutely naive. But, to me, I don't know. This is... When I first saw that report that night by the Indianapolis
Bob
TV,
Kravitz.
The TV anchor.
Now working for a TV. No, he used to be a columnist.
Okay,
a longtime columnist, very good columnist. Just really ethical, good reporter, good writer. And he switched from his newspaper to work for a local TV station.
And when I saw it, I was fascinated by the story, but I thought it was just going to wind up being nothing. And then when they are actually coming out the next day and saying 11 of the 12 footballs were underinflated, and then I'm going back through his Twitter account and reading the vitriol that he received from Patriot fans, calling him a sore loser and move on, and your team got killed. I mean, that is such a ridiculous... I mean, that is so much...
That's the response I always get from other fan bases. Everybody makes the stupid assumption.
Take a step back.
But and let's start with the first stupid assumption, which people just don't get. If I rip the Green Bay Packers for some reason, it's not because I'm a Viking fan or because I live in Minnesota. It's because that's what I actually think. I'm not, I'm paid to have... Nobody's purely objective. Everybody has a perspective. But I'm paid to be professional and objective. You're paid to be professional objective. I know when you questioned the hit that hurt Ballard, a lot of people from that fan base attacking you because they make the stupid assumption that you and I are fans and we're just reacting out of emotion. It's the opposite.
I mean, nobody, praised me when I stood up for Tyson Berry,
Right.
like when with Matt Cook's knee on knee. I mean, that's just the way that's just the way that I think we're trained. But I don't know. I mean, if I were these fans a couple days later and seeing how big this was, and the fact that somebody, whether it was Belichick or a ball boy a ball boy under instruction from Tom Brady, or however these balls got underinflated. If I'm a Patriots fan, I'm embarrassed. I mean, are you kidding me? Like you have to go into an AFC Championship game and think that is okay? I mean, that's absurd. And at some point we got to realize that this there's a bigger message to all our kids that this is not too many people are sports fans now that you could sit there and say and be influenced by something like this. And I just think it's the wrong message to be sent out. And if I was Bill Belichick, that's what I would have done today. Because I said, look, I had nothing to do with this, but this is wrong. If something bad was done here, I apologize, because this is not how I would. Again, maybe I'm naive.
Well, I just think the NFL is a different world. I
Yeah.
think it's a complete cutthroat world. And I think part of it is that people in the NFL, and I like most of the people I deal with in the NFL, people in the NFL really do feel like they are in the military. They feel like they're in the CIA. They feel like they're in the most important business in the world. And they take themselves that seriously. And when you start taking yourself that seriously, you can start bending rules in your mind because of what you view as the importance of your mission. I think there are lots of people in the NFL, players, executives, coaches, who will bend a rule if they can get away with it.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree.
Now, the interesting thing here, let's go back to the other point you made, and then we'll get some more hockey talk here and get some questions for you. What happens to him? I think Goodell will suspend Belichick. And the question is for how long? And because if you fine him, big deal. He's already made $50 million. He's going to make another $50 million. If you take away draft choices, Belichick's already proven he can win without high draft choices. The only fitting punishment here is to suspend Belichick for a significant amount of time. The question is, does Goodell have the balls?
Yeah, especially if it turns out that this was a Tom Brady manufactured thing. But not that it matters. I mean, the Bounty Gate. I mean, you saw the amount of people that got in trouble there with the Saints. But, that's the thing. I just hope that it's a real punishment. I mean, first of all, if he suspends anybody, it's not going to be until after the Super Bowl.
Right.
Like if you really want to make a statement,
take him off the sideline of the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
That'd be fascinating.
Start the backup quarterback has to start the first half.
And you'd have to,
I would love that.
Yeah.
Honestly. I mean, that is honestly, you want to make a statement and let everybody know that this is baloney. Make it, sit there and make sure that if it turns out that this was a Tom Brady thing, and like you said, that these poor freaking minimum wage ball kids are going to be the ones that are going to be thrown under the bus here by the Pat. So, I mean, if these guys, if these kids, when they're interviewed by the NFL, sit there and totally implicate a guy like Tom Brady, that'd be something. If all of a sudden, who's the backup? You got to start
Jimmy
the third.
Garoppolo, baby.
You got to start the third quarterback in Arizona in 2 weeks. That'd be awesome.
I got the perfect solution here.
Yep.
You let Russell Wilson pick the footballs he wants to use during the game.
Mm-hmm.
You make Tom Brady play with a Nerf ball.
Yeah, a hockey puck.
A hockey puck. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
All right, that's our football segment for the day. I know you have a lot of people listening that want to hear your hockey views right now. Let's get to a quick Wild at the break synopsis. Do they have any chance coming back at this point?
No, I don't think so. I mean, they're 7 points out. They're like 13 or 15 out of 7th because of the new playoff format in the league. And, I just don't think so. I mean, this is a team that's got to play like at a 750, 800 clip the rest of the way, and they haven't proven that at all that they could do that. And, I just and yet, this is such a perfect Wild position to be at. I think they'd draft 8th now in the draft if they don't win the lottery. I mean, it's just so typical, because they're good enough that they're still going to win games down the stretch. And that's the thing. It's like, even the game in Detroit the other day, they wind up down. That was just such a bizarre game, and why I think it's just impossible for this team to make it. I mean, again, it's another game where I feel like the Wild outplayed the Red Wings, and they're down 4-1 after 2 periods. I mean, that's just the way it is. I don't blame the goalie there at all on any of those goals. But he's pulled. Kemper comes in, does a fabulous job. They rally back, they tie it up, and they don't get the extra point. I mean, that stuff just now you can't afford. I mean, the old hockey cliche is if we play like that, we're going to win more often than we're not. Well, that's good in October to say that.
They've been saying that for months.
But to sit there at the end of January at the All-Star break to hear every single player and coach say that, I don't disagree. You play like that, more often than not, you're going to win. But, you've put yourselves in a position now where it doesn't matter. And so,
I think the problem with that statement is hockey people, it's a work ethic culture. Hockey people want to believe that effort will be rewarded and that playing together will be rewarded. And sometimes what hockey people gloss over is the only thing that matters is goals scored and goals allowed. So if you play great and your goalie gives up 2 cheap ones and you hit 3 posts, you lose. It doesn't matter how well you feel like you play.
That is the tough part of this sport. Royce says it all the time. It's just it is. It's you could outplay a team, but you could have a puck sit there and ricochet off 3 different things and in the net, like the third or fourth goal the other night. And that's just the reality of the sport. Goaltending matters. Goaltending's everything. But here, just looking at the standings, it's not even that they're just 7 points out of a playoff spot. They're 14 points between them. They're 14 points out of 7th. And are you telling me that the Wild are going to figure out a way here when all these teams play each other the second half to hop over Dallas, Colorado, L.A., Calgary, and maybe even Vancouver, San Jose if they're the teams that fall out? It's mathematically, I know it's there, but common sense wise, unless they're going 30-0 the rest of the way. This is just they're in a bad position. You have teams like Dallas that are playing outstanding right now. Colorado is now 4 points ahead of them. The LA Kings are the defending Stanley Cup champs, and they're technically in 9th right now. You got to figure they're going to get it together. They're the best goalie in the league, arguably. The Calgary. The good news is that the Wild do play Calgary, Edmonton, and Vancouver still 9 times, so you're going. You have the opportunity to get points there. But this is a tough go right now. This is it's unbelievable the way that this season unfolded.
I'll go right to a Twitter question because these are good Twitter questions. You usually do get good Twitter questions. Jason Piant, Eisen Vandy, you're familiar with his tweets. Yes, as it looks now, can you give a short primer on what the Wild will be looking to do this summer?
Well, they got to iron out their goaltending situation, and that's another big issue right now is that, you have Dubnyk here, but there comes a point where if they're out of it, you have to just ride Kemper. And the reason why I say that is because, now they have a position where they can't send Kemper to the Iowa Wild legally. Okay, they're going to pull the old he needs to get healthy maybe and go to the minors here for a short rehab stint. But that is clearly, even Kemper said it on the record the other day, that's clearly so they can manage 3 goalies. It's a way to just get them off the roster for, have him play some games. And that we don't know. I'll be honest, watching him play the other night in Detroit, I hate to say it like this, but if Backstrom's the one that they put in that game, there's no way the Wild even get a point.
Oh, no doubt.
So, I don't know if you really genuinely believe you have a chance right now. I don't know if you mess with the goalie situation by throwing Kemper down there. I think you just got to bring Kemper on this road trip and have him back up. It's over for Backstrom here. It just is. So I don't know what that would really solve by putting Kemper in the minors for 3 or 4 games. But regardless, the reason why I say you're going to have to ride Kemper is that now because he can't go to the minors, I don't think you still, I don't feel, I'm doing this, basically the piece I'm doing on Sunday is on goaltending. And there's so many different facets of the story. And because I've had the flu today, I really haven't, organized it in my own head. But I've talked to a lot of people. And, you just see that guys in the NHL, most part that are goalies, they don't hit your peak until 27, 28, 29. So the Wild have put Kemper in this unenviable position. But I don't think that you could sit there and just say, because Kemper went through a tough stretch this year, that he is not the future of this team. So I think that instead of having him ride backup the rest of the way, if the Wild suddenly do lose a bunch of games here in second week of February, have realistically no shot, I think you just got to play Kemper the rest of the way and have him answer questions for you down the stretch with no pressure on you. Because you say to him, look, we're out of it, buddy. Just go in there, play your position that you've done since you were a kid, and just let's see what we got. Because, they've got to have this question answered going into next year. And I don't think that you just want Kemper to just be the backup here. So that is the position that they're in because of just the goaltending flux that they entered the season with. Again, this is a team that wanted to put Kemper in the minors to start with. Josh Harding got hurt, and then they've been in this situation. Then he lost waiver rights, and now this is what we're at. So so I would say goaltending is the big thing that you got to figure out. The other thing going into the summer, and I've said it a gazillion times, especially on my chat the other day, is if they are a huge disappointment, which it looks like they're heading to this season, it is imperative that management sits there and makes an absolute honest appraisal about this roster and decides who's actually helping and is part of the future and who's holding the team back. And then they've got to act that way. You can't just – if they are going to go into next season and just say that this whole year was an absolute fluke, that, look, it just – everything went wrong, right? I mean, it started with the GM and the assistant GM almost dying in a fire to, Bob Suter passing away, to Josh Harding breaking his foot, to – the mumps, to the norovirus, to JP Parisi. If you're going to just throw all that and say that we just hit a season worth of unpredictability that just absolutely killed this roster, I mean, I think that's an injustice going into next year, and then we could find ourselves next January in the same exact position, looking at this team having no hope. So I think they really got to make honest assessments here and then react to that. The problem is that reacting to that probably costs you a ton of money, because that means you're going to be making trades and holding back salary. You're going to be maybe buying out players. And I don't think that, everybody keeps on saying to me, they need to buy out Mikko Koivu. Well, I mean, that's easy for you to say, but you're not the one that has to write him a check for $28 million or whatever the heck the buyout price is. I mean, it's just not the way it works. But if you decide that Mikko Koivu is going to wind up in a year being absolutely untradeable, and now you're going to have 3 years of an untradeable contract, you better react now. You better. And that's going to be the interesting thing here. I think he's the big one, because he's not aging pretty. And he's going to wind up being 3 years of, this organization under this regime has had so many untradeable contracts that you're just asking for a next one. And so I just think that that's the thing that they're going to have to figure out this summer. And trust me, they talked about this last year with Mikko. I mean, they were internally at least discussing, when do we pull the plug on this? And, they decided that it was not the time, because they were going to go into this year with Eric Haula, Mikhail Granlund, and an unknown Charlie Coyle, and, who are we going to have check Ben and Kopitar and all that was kind of the things that they always said. But you know what? I mean, it hasn't helped, so.
Well, and piggybacking off what you said there, even if you played Kemper the rest of the way and told him, okay, we're just going to let you prove to us that you can be a goalie, he knows the pressure's off. Yeah. I mean, I've seen so many athletes have good performances in meaningless games at the end of seasons or in spring training. It wouldn't even solve it for me if Kemper played brilliantly from now on out, because you still don't know how he's going to react to the real pressure of playing for something next fall.
Yeah, it's just a shame the way this has gone for him. I mean, they're essentially, because he was so accelerated into a position that he probably shouldn't have been in, they might have ruined a prospect here. I mean, they really might have. I mean, because of what you just said. I don't think you can go into next year and just assume that he is still your future. And it's just a shame the way that's worked. I mean, look at Jimmy Howard. Guy spent 4 years in Grand Rapids, I mean, that's the way it's supposed to be done. All of us, every day I get tweets like, where's Dumbo? Where's Graovac? I mean, do you look at the Detroit Red Wings? Do you see the Tatar and Nyquist and this Pulkkinen guy? I mean, I had a long conversation today with Ray Ferraro. His son has 16 goals playing for Grand Rapids, has no chance of being on the Red Wings yet. But he just knows it. That's the way it is in that culture in that Detroit Red Wings. His son knows that, I have to just mature and bake in Grand Rapids, and eventually it's going to help me out, because when I go there, I'm going to be ready at 24, 25 years old. It's not, it's frustrating for him. Razor's the one that's telling his son, Landon is his son's name, that, look, be patient, be patient, be patient. But that's the way it is. Dumba should not be here now. Graovac should not be here now. And you want examples of why not? Look at Mikhail Granlund and Charlie Coyle and Eric Haula, who's been maybe their biggest disappointment this year. It should be Scandella and Zucker paying their dues. It is not an injustice when they sit there and make Jason Zucker go to the minors 15 times a year. That is the way it's worked. That's the way it worked for Keith Primo. That's the way it worked for everybody. I mean, guys are... That is why the minors exist. You make your mistakes down there. You become a star down there. You play 30 minutes down there. And the Wild, because they have made the choice of, going out and signing all these veterans to 5 and 6, 7 year deals, two cases 13-year deals. Unfortunately, when you have those type of huge cap hits, the point is that you almost need the $800,000-$900,000 youngster on the team, and that's just the way that this team did it. I think if they had to do it over again, I think they'd realize that was probably a mistake.
Mark R. asks, will Coyle always have to be prouder to use his size? Seems like his personality doesn't mesh with his abilities.
Yeah, I mean, that is true. I mean, it's funny. I sat next to David Backus on a plane to the Olympic camp, the Olympic orientation camp a couple Augusts ago. And I chatted with him I chatted with him for pretty much 2.5 hours. He was so lucky to be right next to me.
You got him upgraded.
But what's interesting about him is that even when you're chatting with him, and he's a great guy, there's an edge to him. You can just see there's a little bit of a prick there, and you need that. Like they want Coyle to become Backus, but I don't know if you could make somebody become that. I mean, you talk to Charlie Coyle off the ice, and he is, the nicest person ever.
Yeah.
And that doesn't. I mean, you talk to Nino that way, and it's the same way, but he does have that kind of edge to him, And that's the thing. I mean, you're right. It's kind of what I said to you last week. I mean, Rob Niedermeyer was the nicest person I've covered, and I've said that about 50 people. But when the Panthers finally realized that Rob Niedermeyer's 26-goal ceiling was just absolutely almost an aberration. Actually, really what happened is he scored 26 goals. They went to the Stanley Cup Finals. Game, I think, 1 or 2, Lindros concussed him, and he became a checker that day. Like, he just wasn't the same player when he came back. But the Panthers finally realized, and this shouldn't be something that Chuck Fletcher forgets because he was the assistant GM on that team, is that what the Panthers finally realized is, he's not going to be a first-line center. So we're going to turn him into the best third-line center we can, and he's going to be a penalty killer and blah, 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 blah. Now, you could, somebody said to me a couple days ago when Coyle had that great game that we were at, this is a day after you said he should be a third-line center. You could play the way that he did that day and be a third-line center. That just shows you how that, to me, turns you into a good team if you have Charlie Coyle playing like that on your third line. So I just think that there needs to come a point where they just absolutely assess exactly what he is. Because, again, as we've said 1,000 times, you and I mean, if you look throughout his history, he's never been a scorer at any level other than when he was in high schools, preps, and he went for half a season to St. John, and he had Jonathan Huberdeau putting pucks on his stick, I mean, and even there, I wouldn't say that he lit it up completely. I mean, Stéphane Veilleux was a scorer in Quebec League. I mean, it's not exactly a defensive league, that league. So I just think that, and I still think that Charlie's going to be a heck of a player, but I do think that if we all expected him to probably be a perennial 30 to 40 goal guy, I mean, first of all, the Wild have never in their history had that other than Gaborik or Brian Ralston. So, I mean, that's just the way this is,
Thoughts about San Jose Sharks moving their AHL affiliate to their home arena? Could a setup like that benefit the Wild?
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually, if I don't know if you saw in like November or December, I was the first one that kind of wrote that huge story that the AHL was about to close up shop in about 5 teams, and all those Western teams. I think it's ridiculous every day when we see that the the Anaheim Ducks have to send somebody down or call somebody up from Norfolk, and the San Jose Sharks from Worcester, and the LA Kings from Manchester. It's a competitive disadvantage for those teams. They've got to keep more players on their roster. How about the Wild this year? How many times have you had a morning skate and they find out somebody can't play, and at least you have Des Moines down the road? These guys can't get players out to games, so they're moving all these teams. Arizona, Colorado, Vancouver. I think we're going to see. All these teams are going to move out west, and I think that's a good thing. They're going to have a whole West division out there, and that press conference is coming up, and it's been something that's been in the work for 2 or 3 years. It's a shame that we're going to see some of these great AHL franchises lose teams, but that's the way it works. Especially when your teams like say the LA Kings that own their team, they have a right to do whatever they want with the Manchester team.
Will Tomlinson asks, does Yo have any say on incoming trades and personnel moves, or is it all Chuck Fletcher?
I think that he has input, but it's not like Colorado where Patrick Waugh is essentially making the trades. But he has input, but I would say that for the most part, where he really has input in it are probably call-ups and things like that. He decides the roster and they react. So if Mike Yo wants Matt Dumba to play in Edmonton, he won't go to the AHL All-Star game, and he'll come up. Now, the only thing that Chuck Fletcher asked in that the case is that if you're going to take Matt Dumba up, I don't want him playing 11 minutes and on the thing. So that's where the communication lies in. In terms of trades, I mean, I think for the most part, I could tell you that Mike Yeo on the Dubnyk thing wasn't very involved. In fact, he didn't know a ton about Dubnyk. But I think there's more communication between Chuck and Mike than, say, there even was between Jacques and Doug Risebrough and that time that we, landed in Calgary after the trade deadline and they had no clue who Dominic Moore was. Or when we were in Washington, that you will remember, because you picked up the team in Tampa when we were in Washington, and everybody was irate over the Chris Simon trade, including the coach and the players. So
let's go big picture here. The Wild makes the run to the playoffs last year. They played very well in the first round. They upset Colorado, and they played pretty well against Chicago, but they lose 4 games to 1. Should we look at that 2-month stretch as what this team should be, or is there a chance, looking at what's happened over the last 3-4 years, that was the aberration?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good point, because they were so. I guess the one just disappointing thing, or not disappointing, but the one thing that's hard to really grasp with this team is that there have been such extreme highs and such extreme lows, and there's an example of this extreme high. And so I don't know if you really, Chuck Fletcher says it even, we got to figure out what this team is. And it's scary when you're, what is this? He came in 2009, so this is 6 or 7 years that he's the GM, and it's 4th year of Mike Yeo, and you don't exactly know yet what you are. And that's what I mean by they've got to be realistic and really take honest assessments here, because I'm sorry. I mean, I just look at where the Wild are, and I don't see how they catch up. I just... they don't have Patrick Kane and Jonathan Taves and game breakers. They don't have any game breakers. None. There's that in Chicago, when they need a play to happen, it is going to be Kane or Taves, or whatever you say about whether Colorado's taken a step back this year or not. I'm sorry. Duchesne and Landeskog and McKinnon give them a future that, in my opinion, is probably brighter than Minnesota's right now. And again, this team has never been able to be in a position where it's bottomed out. I mean, the closest they've picked to the top since the Marian Gaborik year, when they were given that pick, was in 2005, when they were also essentially given that pick, 4th overall, and they screwed up. Took Benoit Pouliot when there were 1,000 other people. You look in the draft now, and you're like, oh my God, they waited one. Carey Price went 5th. Can you imagine how history would have changed if they had drafted Carey Price? Although there's an example of, 4 or 5 years ago, 3 or 4 years ago, there's an example where there were some, I talked to Ray Ferraro about this today, but, in Montreal, there was a real fracture, or, there was real, people on both sides. Some people wanted Yaroslav Halak, some people wanted Carey Price and thought that Halak was the future and Price was the future. And can you imagine if they had chosen to trade the wrong guy there? Obviously Halak's having a great year on Long Island, but they made the right choice keeping Carey Price. That team lives and dies with its goaltending right now, the Canadiens. So, I don't know. It's just I would say that I do think that last year was not an aberration. They were a great hockey team, but I do think that maybe a lot of stars aligned. They played the perfect team. A young team.
Colorado gave them a chance.
Yeah. They were so bad defensively. Varlamov wasn't very good, and because it was their first time in that kind of scene, it was perfect where the Wild could. Think of that Game 7. The Wild rallied 4 different times.
Yeah.
They were down by a goal 4 times in that game.
It was great drama, but it was great drama because it's not like they outplayed Colorado. They just were very opportunistic.
Yep.
I think last week you were going to tell me a travel story or a coffee story. Do you remember it?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have any from this week? Either travel, coffee, or music story.
I don't remember what the travel story was. Travel, coffee, or I don't know.
Okay, well, let's switch to this then. As a hockey
if somebody
guy,
remembers the story I was going to tell, tweet me.
As a hockey guy, how will you spend Super Bowl week? Will you care?
We're in Vancouver for 3 days, which a lot worse things could be. The Wild.
You and I got to spend the Olympics there.
Unfortunately, the Wild. Yeah, right. We were there a month. That was pretty cool. the Wild play that afternoon, so I'll probably miss maybe the first half of that. But I'll definitely be watching the Super Bowl. I mean, I want to see how the Patriots figure out a way to concoct this victory.
I'm going down there with Mark Craig, our football writer from the paper, and I'm really looking forward. I mean,
where are you staying there?
I think they have us at a Hyatt.
Okay.
I don't know the area well.
So down in
where
Phoenix.
that is. Yeah.
Because the Renaissance right next to the stadium is an awesome
Yeah, I don't
place.
think we're getting any of the prime spots. I think the sports writers are out in the boonies where we belong. You
should stay at the JW in Scottsdale. That is unbelievable.
I'd have to have like Mike Russo pull to get into there. Have you covered a Super Bowl?
No, I've never been to a Super Bowl. Yeah.
I was going to ask you what the difference between covering like the NHL Finals and covering a Super Bowl
is.
is.
I covered every NHL Finals till 2007. I haven't been to one since. I mean, the Finals are an awesome show, but I mean, the Super Bowl is the Super Bowl. I've covered national championship college games, but I don't think I've ever been to a Super Bowl. You think I'm so cloudy because I'm on so many meds from this flu.
Well, it is interesting because when you cover the NHL Finals, you cover the World Series. It's all dictated by action.
Yep.
There's always you're reacting to the last game, you're setting up the next game, and it's all immediate. And there's always something that just happened. Super Bowl week, it's like theory. You're talking to people about what might happen. What might have happened, what might happen in the future. But I do think for all the things the NFL does poorly, and they do a lot of things poorly, they've turned Super Bowl into an incredible week to cover. Because, Wednesday and Thursday, they bring every player and every coach from both teams out, and they all sit at a table. And you can, I've had some of the interviews in my career sitting and talking to people for like an entire hour. Last year, I think I spent an hour with Darryl Bevel. One year I talked with Tony Dungy for a long time before his team won its only Super Bowl. It's remarkable how good, because what you're going to hear a lot during Super Bowl week is, it's this stupid media day circus. People are standing around shouting stupid questions.
Yeah.
The reality is that most of us get to sit at a table and have a real conversation with somebody that you might not even get to do during the regular season.
If you think about it, the only Vikings game I've covered in Minnesota was in Phoenix. Remember that? When we were in Glendale?
Right,
yeah, the Wild were playing there the next day or 2 days later, so they kind of picked me up. If you remember, I think I'm pretty sure that was the game where the Vikings went in 8 or 9-0 and then lost.
They did.
Yeah, so I think that shows you who the jinx is in this town.
Was that the E.J. Henderson?
That was, remember, because that was when I got Curtis Foster on the phone and did that story right away about breaking your femur. And that was also, remember the story, I don't know if I should say this on the air, but since we've already mentioned 1,000 off-the-record things every week here, but remember that was the game where I was kind of assigned to do a sidebar. There was a guy that was playing his first ever game on the offensive line for the Coyotes, what are they? The Cardinals. And yeah, I know. So remember, he was playing his first ever game, and he was going head to head against Jared Allen, and he roasted Jared. Jared had one of his worst games this season. So afterwards, because I was doing the E.J. Henderson thing, I got whoever the D-back was that threw the other guy into him. I got him one-on-one in the locker room. Remember that? That kind of essentially broke E.J.'s leg. So then
Marcus Sanford?
I don't remember who it was. It was a rookie. So I talked to him, and then all of a sudden I see Jared Allen alone, and he had already done his press scrum. So I went over to him and say, "Hey, I know you're done. Do you mind if I get you?" He's like, "Yeah, no problem." And he was cool. And I basically asked him about, here's this hockey writer asking him about getting killed that day by some guy that's never played before. Because what happened was the week before, the starting left guard or whatever it was tore his ACL. So this guy was going. So that's the story I was writing. So anyway, I write this sidebar up where I'm quoting Jared Allen. And the next day, apparently, all hell broke loose because I guess he wasn't talking to our paper, but he didn't know. He didn't know that.
That's right.
That I worked for the Strib. So he kind of like accused us of basically sending over this that basically we tried to fool him to get me to basically.
He was actually mad at me because I wrote something about him. He had.
I thought he was mad at CJ. I thought that he wouldn't talk.
I
thought he wouldn't talk to us because of CJ.
That might have been CJ.
Yeah.
You're right.
So. But yeah, so the next day I'm getting like emails from editors like, "You're the first Strib person that got him one-on-one all in like a year and a half." So let's see, I'm looking at my Twitter to see if anybody told me what the story was that I was supposed to tell. That was fun though. That was covering that game. The only other Vikings game I went to was that 49er game at the Metrodome where I worked was when I was shadowing Tony Saragusa on the field. And basically no sports writers during the game get to go on the field. So I got to watch the entire game from the field. It was just awesome.
It's remarkable, and I know this from being on some fields back in the old days when you get down there and also covering training camp, like full scrimmages, the level of violence in a football game when you're up close, it's frightening. Yeah. I mean, the hits, the sound of the sound guys make when they're hitting or getting hit, it's like they're superhuman.
Yeah, I told you last year the Wild were in Buffalo, and the Browns played it was on a Sunday afternoon. The Browns played. So the Wild were playing a Monday night game. It must have been in Buffalo, and so I was in the concierge lounge there after the Browns played the Bills, and Ed Hockley and his crew were in there, and I basically spent the night talking with Ed Hockley and his entire crew, great guys. But it was just, we were talking about that, just the violence on the field and how, just the stuff that they hear during games. And it was unbelievable. I mean, just listening to the stories. And Hockley was a very nice guy. I was actually starstruck by him. I was like taking secret pictures of him because he was just
his biceps?
Well, he was like sitting there, and he was like basically just sitting there, but he was essentially flexing. And
he's always flexing.
So I did one of those where I kind of put my phone up, took a picture of him just to send to all my friends. I'm like, look at Hockley. He's wearing like a skinny man shirt in the concierge lounge.
It's medium.
Yep. Well, Chad Graff from the Pioneer Press is convinced that Hockley knew I was taking pictures of him because all of a sudden right after he just got up and changed seats.
That's awesome.
So anyway.
Everybody rips Hockley. I will say this. That rule book is so ridiculous.
Oh, I told you.
Long and complicated. I actually appreciate the fact he will tell you exactly what he's doing.
Yeah.
Because when you hear those guys not fully explaining, you have no idea what they're thinking.
Yeah. No, it's like I told you. I sat next to the plane next to that guy from Florida that's a teacher that did the Panther Viking game this year, and he was reading the rule book as a refresher on the flight up here, and it was unbelievable. The amount of just pages and notes he had in this book and highlights, and and he reads this on the way to every game that he works.
Well, that's so many people have gotten a hold of me trying to say, listen, let's blame the referees for the balls being underinflated. These guys are already overwhelmed. They're part-time employees who fly in, who have that huge rule book to memorize and worry about. They have 22 players at a time to worry about. They're trying to get the ball in and out of play as quickly as possible. You cannot leave everything up to the officials.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, it's just such a typical thing. Blame the refs. Don't blame the cheaters.
Right.
Blame the refs. I mean, this wouldn't have come up if they didn't take one of the balls out of play to begin with, So at some point they realized that something was amiss.
Colts linebacker made the interception.
Yeah.
Pointed out that ball felt a little funny.
Yeah. That's unbelievable. I don't know. I hope, I was thinking about this today because that Colts owner is a freaking psycho anyway.
Yes.
I would sue the hell out of the Patriots. Just make this a story that will never go away. Wouldn't you? I mean, I'm sure he'd come up with some way to just sue this team.
I love all that in theory. The problem is that the competition committee is made up of all these owners.
Yeah.
And none of them, they all know that at some point somebody in their organization might get nailed for something like this, and they don't want a precedent set that's too.
I love the pictures that came out this week. Sorry, I got a text message from Brian Ralston here. What was I saying? I love the pictures this week that came out of Goodell out with at Robert Kraft's home, and man, Robert Kraft's wife. Oh my God, what's she like at 20?
The best wife money can buy.
God, she's got to be 50 years younger than him. You see the pictures?
So go get rich, Michael, and see what happens.
I know.
That's Michael Russo. I'm Jim Souhan. This has been SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Tomorrow, Friday, 5 p.m. at O'Gara's with Tom Pelissero, the USA Today football writer. Monday, back at the local, 5 p.m., Twins president Dave St. Peter. Last night was G.B. Layton, and we have a whole bunch more coming up. Michael and I figure out when we're doing our next week. I'll be in Phoenix, but maybe we'll have you pop in the new Alive and Social Studios to run the show, Michael. You'd get to ask the questions and answer the questions then. I would just sit on the phone.
Yeah. I would do that. By the way, Ralston, I shouldn't read his text, but he wants to be in the alumni game when it's here next year, the Stadium Series game. So he wanted to know how he gets in it. So there you go.
Tell him he comes on the show.
He'll come on the show. Greatest, one of the greats that I've covered.
He was a really classy guy.
Yep.
All right, Michael Russo, Jim Souhan. Thanks to Evan Davis. Thanks to Sean Bernard. The Alive and Social Network. Again, everything downloadable at SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Talk to you soon.